I'm so proud and so pleased to have you sitting in front of me today. Knowing you from YouTube, Hidden Colors, and all the other venues that I've seen you at, I thank you, and it's a pleasure for you being here. Let's give him a hand again. And first of all, I'd like to also thank Dr. Jamal Miller Bay with the Rich program for sponsoring this particular show and bringing you all the way from Africa, actually, to be here with us. So let's get right into it. Tell me, what do we need to do? I want to get right into it with our young black men today.
The simple answer is organize. The more specific answer would be number one, we have to make sure we provide our young people with opportunity. Why is it so difficult to organize the youth? It's because we don't have anything for them. We want them to come together, but we don't have anything to offer them. I always say, if you have jobs for the youth, you can fill 1 million of them up if you need that many. So we have to make sure we have something for them. Information is good. Information is critical. Information is necessary to raise the consciousness of our young people. But information is not sufficient. You have to have opportunity, economic opportunity in particular, especially when you're dealing with black males, because the two biggest weapons used against them is miseducation and economic castration.
Now, how do we go about getting that funding for them to have those jobs, for them to have the opportunity to be entrepreneurs? I've been running into that problem myself, even with my own business. How's a young man coming straight from the streets going to have the opportunity to get that type of money?
Well, number one, obviously I have a bias. Being a Pan-Africanist and a Garveyite, I don't look for funding from any source that happens to be of enemy persuasion. So for me, funding from the government, white philanthropists, or white racist corporations is not an option. The funding needs to come from within the community. And we have the economic wherewithal to fund any program that we need. We are a $1 trillion economy that makes us the richest group of Africans on the face of the earth and the 10th richest nation in the world. So why is a people with that type of economic vitality looking outside of itself to provide for itself? We have to create our own economic engine to fund the building of our own infrastructure. That means, as much as we talk of black business, we need to simultaneously be talking about black banks, black credit unions, and black savings and loan institutions. The black business talk is limited unless you talk about the financial institution that is going to incubate these businesses and where these businesses can also house their funding. If you put black money in a white bank, even if the money is organized, it's going to benefit white supremacy more than black folk. In the final analysis, our money must be kept in a black holding institution.
Now, how can we get that to the minds of people? I mean, even with you saying that, it makes sense. We should do that. But a lot of people are not going to go along with that because basically they're in the matrix, they're programmed. How do we get that message out so we can have our people fulfill that?
I think it'll be a little easier than we give it credit. And the reason I say that is the way finance operates. You're able to loan capital that you don't even have based on the amount of deposits that you have in your particular bank or financial institution. That means that black people holding their money in the same place puts us in a position to do more just with their deposit than a donation. So if our people understood that I can help my community more just by depositing this money in a black bank, even if I spend it all, it's the deposit that gives the institution the ability to build off of the money. So we don't need donations, we need deposits. So if our people understood the science of money and the laws of economics, I think a lot of them would be more willing to go along with a program like this. But our Achilles heel has been that we have not focused on the economics of our situation enough. Most of our problems as a people can be traced to our dysfunctional economic habits. For example, take elected officials. We often talk or decry how black elected officials don't really carry out a black agenda. Well, that's because most of them are financed by white money. If the Democratic Party is financing the campaign of a black elected official, after they win, whose agenda are they going to carry out? The agenda of the black community who only voted, or the agenda of the Democratic Party who financed the election? The reason Chinese politicians are loyal to Chinese people is because Chinese people finance them. The reason white politicians are loyal to white people because their community financed them. And the reason black politicians are seldom loyal to black people is because they're normally financed by another community.
And with that being said, is there less money in the black community? Is this the reason why the politicians are not doing the things that they should do for the black community? In most cases, their agendas change once they get into politics.
Well, again, it goes back to who's financing. Black people have been miseducated to believe that the vote is the king. Voting is what changes things. That's so erroneous. People don't get into politics to get money. People get into politics to protect the money that they've already accrued. Politics is a protection for wealth that you've already earned. Politics does not bring you more wealth. Black people have been taught that if you vote for the right person, wealth will accrue to the community. That is so incorrect. Politics are controlled by those who have the money. Those with the wealth dictate to those in office how things are going to go. That means our money is a much more powerful weapon than our vote ever could be.
So with the people that's here today, that's here listening to what you're saying, what is the first step as this group that's here that's listening to everything? What should we do?
One of the things that we need to do, and one of the things I'm working on right now, is an unapologetically African credit union, where black folk in the different cities where we live can concentrate our money in the same holding institution so we can finance the infrastructure that we need. There's a myth that black folks don't have what other cultures have because we're lazy. That's not true. The difference maker is other cultures have access to capital. When Arabs show up in America, they show up with a line of credit from their nation state, or they're able to get a loan from Bank of America or Wells Fargo. When Latinos show up, when Chinese show up, when East Indians show up, they show up with a line of credit, or they can easily secure one from one of America's financial institutions. But because of economic racism, black folk don't have that opportunity. There's no bank we can walk into and get a $2 million loan. Right. So we're always behind the 8 ball. We cannot compete with a group that has access to capital when you don't. So we have to become the capital ourselves. That means we have to work a little bit harder and pull the money together. Along with that, though, we have to be very, very honest about the role that black church has played in the economic devastation of black folk. One of the things that I think all black churches should have is a bank or a credit union, and not ones whose central tenet is to build a larger church. But that bank that is owned by that church should be used to finance the hospitals, finance the schools, finance the strip malls, finance the distribution networks that we need as a people. The church could do the job. The problem, though, is ever since former President George W. Bush gave us the faith-based initiative, so many black churches have been looking for some of that free money that they've lost their responsibility to the larger community. And as such, the black church in many cases has become the new FBI, faith-based initiative.
Wow. How do we go about getting to the churches? Now, we've been saying this for a while. All our money goes to the church. You said it on YouTube. It doesn't really benefit us. It benefits the bigger buildings because what you're saying is not Christian-based. How do we get the Christian black man and black woman to get on board to what we're doing?
I don't think it's about being Christian. I think it's about consciousness. You have Christians who are conscious. You have Christians who are not. You have Muslims who are conscious. You have Muslims who are not. You have everyday black folk, atheistic and otherwise, some of whom believe in God, others don't, but it's about the consciousness, not the religion. I disagree with some brothers and sisters in the conscious community who believe you have to change the religion of black folk in order to change their condition. I don't agree with that. I look at Malcolm X, he was a Muslim. I look at Marcus Garvey, he was a Christian. You don't have to change the religion, you have to change the consciousness under which they operate. Keep their religion, leave that alone. Focus on what they're not dealing with. We don't suffer because of what we believe. We don't suffer because of how we pray. We suffer for the skin that we are in. We suffer because we are African.
Right. So let's talk about the school that you have, are trying to put together. Where are we with that right now?
The Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey RBG International Leadership Academy is a concept that I had come up with several years ago. Last year, around April to be specific, I learned about the St. Paul's College that was for sale in Lawrenceville, Virginia, a historically black college that closed down about 3 years ago. So I went down there, entered into a relationship with the president of the college, President Stiff, who gave me permission to use the name to raise money. So I entered into a bid to try to get the school. I knew I wouldn't get it, but I just wanted to make sure it was on record. I was called down by the realty company, had lunch with them. They spoke with me about how they would be willing to work with me, but I would need to raise some capital that would make them think seriously about doing a deal with me. So from May of last year until this year, we've raised $500,000, but the asking price is $2 million. So we're still 75% away from the goal, but as long as the school is there, we're going to keep on pushing. Even if the school sells, we're still going to build the school. St. Paul's is not the be-all, end-all. It is the best case scenario, though, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And what I'm thinking I'm going to have to do, because we don't have forever, our boys are in a state of crisis. The miseducation machine is in full throttle. So come New Year's Day, I'm going to have to make a decision to go ahead and build the school here as a day school without the residential component, which I don't want to do because my vision is residential school. And the reason residential school is so important for me is I understand how critically necessary it is to protect the minds of our children as we educate them. Me educating a black boy or girl from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. and then they go home, and then from 3 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next morning, their parents or radio, internet, TV, iPod, Xbox, scandal, or empire undoes everything that I did, then you're constantly starting over every day. So my conceptualization is a residential school, but sometimes you have to crawl before you can walk. So if we're not close to the $2 million by New Year's Day, I'm going to go ahead and purchase a regular school.
Very good. Now, you spoke about the media machine. With us, we don't have a school here yet. We have the RICH program. People do go home. How do we protect the people that we're teaching? How do the parents protect their kids from the media machine, the Xbox, the different TV shows? How do we protect them from that?
Well, number one, when it comes to media, what we have to understand, there's no law that forces you to let your child watch television. There's no law that forces you to spend thousands of dollars on video games and cell phones. There's no law for that. We voluntarily participate in this type of psychological propaganda campaign. I often say that black parents actually are investing in their children's future incarceration. And I say that because when you buy a video game on Xbox, you're buying a device that you know is going to take your child away from academics. The more time he spends playing video games, the less time he spends reading. The more time he spends surfing the internet, the less time he's doing his homework. So we're actually buying gifts that are going to set up a situation where a lot of our young men are going to spend future time in jail because they're not academically astute. And so this special ed that we're seeing and this so-called ADHD gimmick that they've been running on us since 1987 now, okay, which is way out of control. A lot of it is being supported by us because we don't recognize the relationship between academic failure and time spent on unnecessary electronic gadgets.
Very good. Now, let's get to something a little bit more serious. We got a lot of police brutality going on. You heard Farrakhan speak on that, and you heard some politicians speak on it. What do you say as a black community who wants to protect their children, protect the women in the community? What should we be doing, and what should be our mindset?
Well, number one, we got to recognize something from a behavioral psychology perspective. Behavior that is not chastised will increase over time. The police have been getting away with murdering black folk for at least 10 to 15 years in the current generation. We know it goes back to since we got here, but we have seen this unapologetic violence for at least 15 years consecutively, and more pronounced within the past 5 or 6 years going back to Trayvon Martin and coming up. So the question becomes, why would we think it would not get worse when the black community has not offered any sort of a punishment against it? You're going to get more Charlestons. There's going to be more Freddie Grays. There's going to be more Trayvons. Why? Because the first rule of psychology is any behavior that is not chastised must expand. It's going to get worse until we do something about it. And that is to say this: black people are constantly looking for a solution to police violence that doesn't involve violence. Okay. There is no such solution to police violence that doesn't involve violence. And one of the things that I find most interesting about us as a people, given our religious background, if you're Muslim, you're Christian, Hebrew, traditional African spirituality, every religious system teaches that there's no redemption without bloodshed. There's not one religion that we belong to that does not teach there's no redemption without bloodshed. I'm saying that to say that some of us are going to have to sacrifice ourselves, not to win a war against America, because you can't beat America. You're outmanned and outarmed, but you can give America pause. Your job is to make them think twice before they consider taking another African life. And in order to do that, you're going to have to be willing to give up your life as well. The cowardliness of black males is being called into question right now. We are very, very violent and egotistical towards each other, but very docile and meek when it comes to confronting the system. So the time has come, and I agree with Minister Farrakhan. He came under attack for saying it, but he's absolutely right when he called for 10,000 black men to potentially be willing to lay down their lives. I don't think that was a reckless thing. There comes a point in the history of every people where you say enough is enough and you stop bargaining with extermination. You can't cut a deal with white supremacy. And one of the biggest problems we've had with black bourgeoisie leaders is they're always looking to cut a deal with the power structure. There is no deal to be cut. You either put up or you shut up. No doubt.
Let's deal with the gangs that's going on. You kind of touched on them a little bit. With the RICH program, right here in this building, we deal with different young men in different situations. When they hear you speak, they want to respond immediately. They want action today. What would you say to the young gang member who's trying to change his life?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, given the dysfunctionality in the black community, there's going to be more gang activity. Because a gang is a surrogate family. Children join gangs where they don't have the structure at home. They join gangs where they don't have the affiliation and the identity at home. They join gangs where they don't feel protected and that they belong to a unit. So whenever the families are dysfunctional, the gangs will be plentiful. On top of that, what should they be doing? 3 things that all great Africans participated in, men and women, all of our heroes and sheroes. They studied, they struggled, and they disseminated information. So the first thing I say to our young brothers with these community families, as I like to call them, number one, you have to study. You have to understand the world in which you live in. Number 2, you have to struggle. You have to find a project that is worth your time, like the Rich Foundation, in which you're willing to invest time, energy, and money. So you study, you struggle, and then you disseminate information. That means you must go around and you must spread the good gospel of black unity and power to other young people and raise their consciousness and bring them up into the fold. See, we have to understand something. A lot of times we say that black people are resistant to coming into consciousness. I disagree with that. It's the manner in which we want to bring them into the consciousness. And what I've often noticed is that in the conscious community, some of us are more holier than thou than those in church or in the mosque. We're extremely judgmental, extremely critical, to the point that who would want to become a quote-unquote conscious black person when everything you do and everything you wear is constantly being criticized and not considered to be black enough? Well, if that's the case, we can find fault with every black person, because most of us are not self-employed. We're all working for white folk in some way, shape, form, and fashion. So under that category, ain't none of us hotepping. So it's very important that we hold back and stop being so critical about people and how we bring them in. Here's the thing. We talk about the church. But one thing about the church, they will treat you in a good way when you come in there. One thing about the masjid, you're going to be treated with a certain level of respect when you come in there. But when you come into the conscious circle, you understand, you get criticized as opposed to being accepted. And if that's the way we're going to deal with black folk, we will never win out the church or the mosque for the conscious minds of our people. Your marketing strategy needs to be something that is conducive. Black people get beat down enough, and the last thing they need is someone else trying to beat them down because they're not as conscious or cultured as other people would want them to be.
Very good. Okay, we have an audience up here, about 75 people. What do you want these folks right here to know before we end?
I would like them to know that I need their support for the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy. I want them all to go to GoFundMe.com/Dr. Umar and make a donation or mail it in so we can raise as much money as possible to potentially get St. Paul's College. But I also want them to know, and I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow, that we have to stop letting the miseducation machine dictate to you whether or not your child needs medicine or special education. You are the mother that carried the child. You are the parent that birthed the baby. How do you go and let a white woman tell you that your son can't learn how to read, or tell you that he needs medicine to get an education? Take the power back from the school system. Stop letting them tell you what's wrong with your child, and you start telling them what's wrong with the school. Our boys are blamed for a system that was never designed to properly educate them. We can sum up the whole miseducation machine by saying this. There's not a white woman in America. There's not a white woman in America who's going to prepare a black boy to be in a position that can rival her white son for control over the American social order. Black boys want to learn as much as any other child, but they don't want to be emasculated and psychologically castrated in the process. He is a boy, but the public schools are ran by women. So the issue is not education, it is a feminization.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, the beautiful thing about this program today is I've asked Umar some questions. He's answered. But the beautiful thing about it, you guys get to ask him some questions as well. But before we do that, I want to let everybody know how to get in contact with you if they want to donate to your school, or if they want to get in contact with you to book you.
Sure, through the website, drumarjohnson.com, DRUMAR. Johnson.com, Facebook, Dr. Umar Ifatunde. I use my Yoruba last name for Facebook, and on Twitter and Instagram, you can connect with me at Dr. Umar Johnson. And I also don't mind if they give me a phone call. I'm not above that. So that's area code 215-989-9858.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Dr. Umar Johnson.